Hey everyone, I'm Lauren, our editorial manager here at Yext, and I'm excited to be here today to dive into some of our recent research on AI citations with Anthony Rinaldi, our senior director in Insights and Analytics. Hi, Anthony. How's it going?
Hey Lauren, good. How are you?
Doing well. So let's get right into it. We all know that AI search is on the rise. I feel like maybe I'm paid by the mention of saying AI search is on the rise, but it's actually true. About 75% of people, according to some of our recent research, are actually using AI tools more than they were a year ago. 43% use them daily or more. So it's pretty important for marketers to start understanding how these answers are being generated. So, what information LLMs are citing and how they're giving answers to customers when they search. So that kind of brings us into your research. Can you briefly explain what you did and what we're looking at with the new Yext AI citations work?
Sure. Um, Lauren, you said how these brands are being shown, and it's interesting because I think historically we talked about the search landscape in terms of rankings, and when you use these new search engines like ChatGPT and Perplexity in them, they don't
Hmm.
give you rankings,
Yep.
they give you information. So what has been really interesting about this study, and I'll get into exactly how it was done, is that we're not really able to just say, do you rank one or do you rank two or do you rank three? What has been useful is we have just been feeding these models a ton of questions. I'll get into the sample size and everything, but just looking at the answers that they give and trying to figure out where those answers come from. So instead of finding out, do you rank one or do you rank two or do you rank three, we're trying to find out when you show up, how did these search engines know to put you there, right? Like, where did you get your sources, or like we keep calling them citations?
Yeah.
So the research we did, Lauren, was in July and August of this year, we asked different AI models about 1.6 million questions,
Wow.
right? And we got a ton of information back, right? When you ask a question, it gives an answer, but these answers also have sources. So when we say, um, ask a model a question, we might get back not just one source or two sources, but oftentimes five. So the sample is we asked 1.5 million questions and we got back about 7 million citations.
Yeah, I think we want to get into kind of breaking down how you set up those questions, getting into what I know is interesting, the query classification framework, and like just
Sure.
how you grouped the questions to better understand what LLMs are actually doing.
Yeah. In a perfect world, one of these language models is not doing anything incredibly unique. They're answering these questions the same way you and I would answer these questions.
Mhm.
So different types of questions get different types of answers that come from different types of places. So you mentioned question classification. We're not asking one type of question. We're asking kind of four. We ask branded questions and unbranded questions. A branded question is about a specific brand, right? I keep using the Krusty Krab from SpongeBob. Does the Krusty Krab have a good burger?
Hmm.
And we ask unbranded questions like, what restaurant has a burger? So branded and unbranded is one
Yeah.
type of classification. And then objective and subjective. So an objective question is, do they have burgers? It's
Hmm.
fact, right? They either do or they don't have burgers. That's objective. That's a fact. That's a very particular type of question, as opposed to, do they have good burgers, which is a
Yes.
subjective question, right?
Yep.
Is the burger good or is the burger bad? It's not something that I can get an objective fact on. It's a subjective question. So for this study, when I say we asked 1.5 million or 1.6 million questions, we asked objective branded, like, is the Krusty Krab open?
Yes.
We subjective branded. Like, is the Krusty Krab good? That's a branded question because I'm asking about a particular brand, but it's a
Right.
subjective question because I'm asking, is it good or bad? And then we have the unbranded questions, like, who has burgers? Right? That is an unbranded question because I didn't ask
Mhm.
about a specific restaurant, and it's an objective question because they either do or do not
Don't
have
have
burgers.
burgers. Yeah.
And then finally, I guess the last one I'm looking for is a unbranded subjective, which is who has the best burgers.
I can actually help you out with that one because today I did who has a great martini with blue cheese olives. That's one I've been running a lot. ChatGPT had some ideas. Yeah.
Cool, interesting. So
Yeah.
that's who, which is unbranded, right? I don't
Unbranded.
care where I'm going. I don't
I don't care
care.
where, but and it's subjective. It needs to have a great martini, and then actually I threw in a little objective there. Does it have blue cheese stuffed olives? It's a complex
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
very complex question. But so
Uh,
that's generally how we got to our sample of about 6 million citations. Is each one of those, and maybe I'm leading the witness here. Each one of those questions uh, has a different type of place that it wants to go for that information. So
okay, well, please, I think the question on all of our minds is, and where do they want to go for these different types of answers, these different types of questions?
So for example, Lauren, I said, they're not doing anything special. They're doing what you and I would do.
Yeah,
So for example, if I'm asking an unbranded question, I don't know. You decide where to go. If I'm asking for a branded question, I want the answer to come from the brand,
right,
right? If I'm asking a branded objective question, in theory, there's no better person to answer an objective branded question than the brand itself.
right,
Does the Krusty Krab have burgers? Well, let me go and ask the Krusty Krab if they have burgers.
right.
Does the Krusty Krab have good burgers? Boy, do I not want to ask the Krusty Krab about that.
That's a question for the denizens of Bikini Bottom, if you will. Yeah,
Yeah, who knows? Chum Bucket might come up.
there you go.
Just like you and I, where would you go for a subjective question? You'd go to Yelp, you'd go to reviews, you'd go to the TripAdvisors of the world. These less um, branded places. So what we find is that, again, each one of those classifications ends up going to a different place, just like a human would, right?
Right.
Objective questions about a brand should come from the brand. Subjective questions about a brand should not.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of interesting things we've seen in that. At its core. It's just about, do you ask the brand or do you ask the world,
Right.
right? And kind of when and where to do those things.
Well, but so you're saying should a lot. So is that in fact what we see LLMs doing? You know what I mean? Like what are in terms of each of these four quadrants on the query classification framework, where are these AI models or LLMs looking and citing for these different types of questions actually in the real world?
So we classify the question types. We've been through that. It's
Yep.
incredibly easy for me to say out loud. Right? Krusty Krab, Krusty Krab. We also classified the citation places,
Yeah.
right? So I think we ended up with about 6 or 7 different really good groupings. It could be the brand's main website,
Hmm.
right? KrustyKrab.com. This will be, again, I'm putting myself in a terrible position by having to say this 10 more times. It could be the brand's website, KrustyKrab.com. It could be the brand's local website. So locations.krustykrab.com or krustykrab.com/bikini bottom.
Yeah.
Right? I want to know about all Krusty Krabs. I want to know about the Krusty Krab in my neighborhood. That's not
Hmm.
just the website, but that's a more specific type of website. It could come from local directories. Right? We talk about that at Yext all the time. This is the publisher network.
Yeah.
It could come from listings on Yahoo, on Bing, on Yellow Pages, on MapQuest, and we'll come back to that later. But these third-party directories, which is interesting because they are not your brand, but they are a place that your brand should own as well. And then we have other places, right? It could go to social media.
Hmm.
It could go to reviews platforms, right? So the not just the Google reviews platforms, but the Yelps and the and the TripAdvisors of the world. Health Grades even is kind of a place like that. And it could go to more authoritative places like a government website, right? A commerce website, things like that.
Hmm.
Could go to media, blogs, and news, right? Is there? I'm looking for gluten-free burgers, right? I find a gluten-free blog, right? And AI is doing that. Um, or there's just some brand specific places. And a really good example of a brand specific place is what we've seen is getting a lot of citations for the DoorDashes, the
Hmm.
Uber Eats, the Grubhubs. And this is really interesting because there are certain questions where, good job, LLMs, they're getting less hallucinations. They're getting fewer hallucinations. And I think they're catching themselves because there's a lot of questions that we're feeding through that I think in other words, they would just maybe make something up. But
Right.
now, instead of guessing, what they're saying is, does the Krusty Krab have delivery? Instead of saying, I don't know, they'll say, have you tried Grubhub
Have you
in
tried going to
between
DoorDash? Yeah.
Grubhub? So we're seeing a ton in things like food services, these more industry specific places that might not have the answer about the query you're looking for, but these LLMs don't want to put their hands up and say, I don't know. So
Yeah.
they're hallucinating less because they're making fewer judgment calls.
Right.
So I guess an incredibly long-winded answer. What are we seeing? We're seeing in the data that your website, whether that's your brand website or your local website, is coming up about 40% of the time,
Hmm.
which is a lot, right? If
Right.
you add the two things together, basically AI would love to give you first dibs at one of the answers. A little less so in a subjective question, as it should be, right?
Right.
They don't want you to answer whether or not you're good. But when somebody's asking about you, your first right of refusal is you answer it.
Right.
And I think what's really interesting is um, we're finding with those local pages, bikini bottom dot krusty krab or krustykrab.com/bottom, we're finding out that in those objective branded, which are like, not only do I know what I'm asking, I also know exactly what I'm asking it about.
Hmm.
Specific you are, the more likely they are to be specific. So for example, if I'm asking, does Krusty Krab have burgers? KrustyKrab.com is fine.
Hmm.
If I'm asking, does the Krusty Krab in my neighborhood have burgers? AI would love to go to a local
A
version
local
of.
page to answer that. Yeah.
So again, I think that's probably pretty intuitive, but what we found is the more specific these users are about their desires, the more specific that these AIs are about these answers.
Right.
So
So I guess on that note, I maybe you're going to cover this, but I did want to ask specifically then, what does this mean for the Krusty Krab and the Chum Bucket? From this research that's really interesting, what are the actions you're going to take, to help yourself be a part of these answers, or at least the objective answers that you should be when it comes to being sourced by LLMs?
I said that I think it's 40 something percent of the time,
Hmm.
generally, regardless of question type, it'll come from your website or your local website. That number goes up almost to 70% if you throw in these third-party directories,
Okay.
which is incredibly interesting because your website, your local website, your third-party directories, they're places that you should own, right? If
Right.
almost 2/3 of the time, I think it's high 60s%. If
Hmm.
68% of the time, give or take, the answer is coming from a place that you could own, then you should own it. Right?
Good
Those other
takeaway.
Some of those other question types or some of those other answer classifications are reviews and social.
Hmm.
Again, if you think about like a brand's full scope of what they should be owning, AI would love to give those answers. It's not nearly as easy to influence what the blogs are saying or
Hmm.
influence what the media sites and the news, these industry specific directories are saying. But a really good strategy means making sure that you exist in all of these places and making sure that you exist the way you want to exist in them. So
Right.
that local dot or bikini bottom dot crusty page is also the closest search um, to a conversion. Because if I'm looking generically for burgers, that's one thing. If I'm doing
Hmm.
research on what burgers are good, that's one thing. But if I'm asking if a particular thing is true at a particular store at a particular time and
Hmm.
place,
Yep.
if you can give me the right answer, I'm ready to buy a burger.
Right.
So the more specific that you can be, the better
Yeah. It's having that super specific, correct information available so that LLMs can look at it and make you part of the answer because they want to answer the question.
for sure.
Okay, awesome. So to wrap up for today, anything else that really stood out to you or that you think brands should know about this research?
Um, it's a lot of interesting things. We're finding obviously different industries react differently, different question types react differently, different
Hmm.
models react differently. We're starting to see some biases between the Perplexities and the Geminis and the Groks of the world with who they
Interesting.
do and who they don't cite.
Hmm.
Um, One thing that I have seen that has kind of blown my mind is how often MapQuest is cited.
That's really interesting.
Again, certain models have, I think certain models have maybe a different bias about which directories to and don't use based on, I don't know, maybe who invested in them. But to sort by directory, and you see all the players that you're expecting to see at the top, like
Yeah.
a lot of Google citations, a lot of TripAdvisor citations, a lot of Yelp citations, a lot of branded website citations, like I've been saying. But I had to check, 15 different ways and 15 different times to make sure the data was right because boy, are some of these more legacy directories are so close to the top. And MapQuest is the one that's stuck in my craw right now because it's, had we not looked into any of this at all, I don't know, it's sometimes an afterthought.
We
And
probably would not have suspected that what you had listed on MapQuest from years ago when that was what everybody was looking at would actually be coming up in, an
yeah,
LLM's answer. Yeah,
we've done research over the past couple of years about the long tail publishers and the rest of the network. And I don't want to lump MapQuest into there. It is a household name still.
of course.
But these machines seem to be valuing data from these longer tail publishers so much more than human. And yeah, it's sometimes when doing research like this, you want to see a lot of what you expect because it makes you, understand that everything is right, good, fine, a little confirmation bias maybe. But
Mhm.
when you see some of these things like MapQuest at the top, you're like, that's why we did it, I
Yeah.
guess.
No, exactly. That's really interesting. And just that, yeah, having that presence everywhere and thinking about those places that you might not automatically be thinking about every single day, in the AI search world it still matters. So that's cool.
Yeah.
But all right, well, thank you, Anthony, and thank you to everyone for joining us. And if this conversation got you thinking about the future of AI search and how citations play a role, and we hope it did, explore our insights and dive deeper at Yext Research, which is yext.com/research. Thank you all.